Hi, everybody. You may have been waiting for us. My apologies on that. We've been talking animatedly with my guest, but it wasn't broadcasting live at the moment. You may have seen the countdown, so my apologies. My name is Alex Gibson. I'm the founder of AR VR Innovate, and I'm delighted to welcome Filippos Arvanitakis, who is joining us today from Sweden. Thanks so much for joining us today,
Thank
Filippos.
you for having me.
Filippos, we'll do the intro again, which is you're the
Yes.
creative director of a company in Sweden, which is called OutHere.
Yes.
And you work very much in the AR and VR space. I'll give you a moment just to tell us about who are OutHere.
Yes. So we are an agency, basically, like any other communication agency. We follow the same pattern of working with our clients, of finding out creative solutions, building things, everything else. I mean, my background is in digital, and it's very similar to how a digital agency would operate, just that we focus almost solely on virtual and augmented reality experiences, or anything that has to do with mixed reality. Lately, we've been working a lot with surface tables and other kind of related technologies. But basically, that was kind of the idea from the beginning, that we create an agency for immersive technology.
So you're neutral in the sense that you're not B2B or B2C. It's a broad spectrum.
Exactly. We work with both. And I mean, it really depends. And sometimes, you start with one target group in mind and you end up in the other side of the spectrum. So that's kind of the whole idea. I think one difference with us is that all the founding members and some more people within our team, we're about 10 people in general, varying around that number, are all kind of having a background in agency communication. So we understand brands very well. We understand, and that's kind of our task in a way, to bridge, to find a connection between brand communication, the new technology, and some kind of ROI in this whole conversation. Where is the value?
Yeah, and I guess clients, that's what they're looking for, is that you're, in a sense, technology neutral. You're not necessarily an advocate for a particular technology, but rather the appropriate solution may involve a certain technology.
Exactly. I mean, absolutely. This is, I have this very, very shortly, this story that I keep telling, that for me, the biggest transformation of the internet kind of happened. I was there for it when I was working with Volvo Cars. I was designing their website for, I don't know how many years, how many iterations, because I was the CD in the agency doing that work. And when we discovered the impact that it had, that people are now looking for us online instead of on print material, and what kind of transformation that caused in every part of the behavior of the company, because now the internet had value. We could save money on print, on post, on all kinds of things. So it's a little bit like that, even though it's a kind of simple analogy. It's a little bit like that. What brings value with this kind of technology? Because I think we're still kind of thought of as innovation um, in most companies, idea of what AR and VR can do for them.
So a question I like to ask people, because, it's often the case, certainly was the case for me, that there was one particular moment I can identify when I got really committed to investing a lot of my time in AR and VR. And I'm curious if there was something similar for you, Filippos.
It's, I mean, with AR specifically, it was, I think, the project with Bang& Olufsen, which was the biggest project that we have had. We are Bang& Olufsen's agency in everything that relates to AR and VR. And we started with building an app, a place app, which is basically allowing you to see the products in real size, in real space. But that started a whole conversation about, what happens when you have a pipeline of 3D models, how you can utilize those, how does that apply to the whole of the digital ecosystem. So that's the biggest story about that. It's not about an app. So for me, AR brings some kind of mergence between digital ecosystems and 3D pipelines, and what kind of new communication can come through that. And I mean, there's so many aspects of it. The social aspect is massive. We're all using AR in that respect, without even realizing it, through the many, fun filters of the social media apps. There's whole things now happening in Asia with live shopping and live e-commerce, which is using AR a lot. There's all kinds of things. But another, maybe from a more creative and fun aspect, I have a son who's 9. And a couple of years ago, him and his friends discovered that Google allowed you to see animals in real size in AR if you simply Googled for the name of the animal. So you could type lion into the search field, And then if you were on a mobile, you could just have a lion appear in front of you live. And they obsessed with it. They were bringing all animals into the living room, from elephants and bears and pandas and tigers, and taking pictures of them and riding them and doing all kinds of things. And I realized for this generation, they're going to expect an AR model of everything that they're interested in their living room, in their devices. So that for me was maybe the biggest aha moment.
That's very interesting. Yeah. My light bulb moment, which I've shared at many a conference I've spoken at, was at the National History Museum in Dublin, when I was testing a very simple prototype of an animation that brought some of the animals to life, shall we say, using a really simple 3D, free 3D model. And I was working away on it, just looking at how good the registration was, when a small child behind me asked me what I was doing, and I tried to explain, and then I showed him. And before I knew it, there were 25 school children, because it was a school trip with their teachers. They all wanted to see this animal come alive. And that for me was really compelling, because I realized then this is actually really a game changer, really, in terms of education.
Very similar to the example I gave too. It's the same feeling, and it's magical, and I really like that.
Yeah. So I brought you on here as well as getting your own general insights to talk about the AR VR Innovate conference. For people who haven't been to this conference, I should let you know that it's well established on the map at this stage. We're delighted that we're actually in year number 10 this year. So it's in the RDS this year, which is fantastic. And we've got a couple of speakers from the original conference. I hope to have them on a call such as this in the near future. But I wanted to ask you, Filippos, a little bit about what you're planning to tell the delegates about. I mean, I know you haven't finished your speech yet, but what are the general themes that you hope to talk about?
I mean, again, using Bang & Olufsen and IKEA, who are also our clients, with the Place apps, I'm going to talk mostly about what we did, but in relation to a vision that I have, in that all product photography is going to disappear from the internet very, very soon, which means that no company will have pictures of their products online. We're still struggling a little bit with fabric when it comes with clothes, but there is so many more companies that are appearing that are trying to solve that problem. So basically, I'm talking about a world where every product that you see online, whether it's a car, it's a stereo, it's a piece of garment, it's a handbag, or whatever you can imagine, an industrial part, isn't a picture anymore. It's a 3D model. And that 3D model in WebGL format has customization options. You can alter colors, dimensions, develop it yourself in any way that you want. It has an AR view that is instant through both Android and iOS devices. And then, it allows all these different functions. And of course, maybe the biggest thing here, we work with another company that does high-end kitchens for the home. And for them to assemble a kitchen and sew it in their website is a massive endeavor. They need to bring crews in, and they need to photograph and filters and cameras. But we did all that with 3D, and we output it in WebGL, and then created AR models of that as well. So basically, to make this story a little bit shorter, a 3D pipeline can affect the whole digital ecosystem in so many ways. It can save so much money. It can bring products so much faster to the audience. And then, of course, there's always the e-com aspect at the end of that journey, which, of course, brings the ROI that we were talking about before.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's going to really resonate with a lot of the audience, whether they're in a B2C, B2B environment, whether they're in consumer goods. I mean, we do know that the big players like Amazon, for example, they've a lot of focus, a lot of teams in this space. They've their own development software called Sumerian, and they're not alone in identifying this as a massive opportunity. So I think that's really interesting. I suppose the big topic today, and I'm sure we'll be talking a lot about it at the conference, and I'm going to encourage all my speakers at some point in their presentation to at least reflect on it, is, of course, artificial intelligence and how it's impacting on immersive technologies. Just briefly, what's your own take on this, Filippos?
Oh, I mean, the truth is we are totally mesmerized by it. We are totally in love with it. We already use it and try to register with as many different platforms as we can find. And every day there seems to be a new one. There is very valuable, valid debates about certain aspects of it in terms of, from copyright to ethics to a lot of other stuff. But I think I'm going to skip that for a while, not because it's not important, but because it's not a part of this conversation. But where I think the the big revolution is going to happen is when these systems are going to start to connect. So it's not an AI platform in itself, it's when we can connect it to the apps and experiences that we do. So, for example, we are already in a project that I can't talk about right now, that we are setting up avatars in a virtual reality space, and we are allowing the avatars to read and speak through an AI speech system, which actually makes them alive. It makes them sound more realistic, and they have the ability to input an immense variety of copy, of text, of discussions and conversations. So those mergers, those conversions between AI systems and the work that we all already do, I think is where the real transformation is going to happen.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, even as you say, it's almost on a daily basis we're seeing, new apps, new natural language processing, I think they call it, where you can, and of course there's some ethical and issues around this in terms of deep fakes, because the ability to create any voice of any person and transmute it and put it onto any other animate object, whether it's an avatar or a human, is quite compelling at one level, but also quite frightening at another level.
Very much. I mean, I think it's something that we as a species, as a society, we're going to have to talk about a lot and deal with for the next few years.
Yeah,
and what I think a lot of people don't realize is that these systems are every day they're smarter than yesterday.
Yeah.
I mean, Midjourney is already on version 5 within less than a year.
I know. Yeah,
and it's just extraordinary. It's an
exponential. Yeah. Look, there's going to be loads of talk around this, I'm sure, and I'm looking forward to, particularly in the panels, maybe to get our teeth into it. And the conference is still 6 weeks away, so who knows what the world what will have happened even in that short period of time, because it's breathtaking what's happening at the moment. I did want to get your thoughts from an agency perspective. When you're selling in an idea, typically I think it's fair to say you may be selling into or working with initially innovation teams or development teams who've got maybe small budgets that the senior management are happy with them to play around with ideas. But a big issue I hear a lot from agencies, and indeed the teams that they're working within companies, within innovation companies, is how do you get buy-in further up the line, particularly from top management, to take a project from being a pilot to being something that's at scale? What's your thought on that?
To be honest, it's a little difficult, especially in a world which is going through the economic difficulties we are all going through right now, where generally finances are hard on everyone and all companies, and after the pandemic and all that happened through that, it's not as smooth sailing as it used to be maybe a few years ago, and some of the excitement of things has fallen a little bit back, and there is no clear return of investment for many companies yet. Most of the times when we get a project, it usually comes exactly like you said, through some kind of some component of the innovation budget. There's the whole digital ecosystem. Sometimes that falls within that, but sometimes it falls in other places. And also another very common story is that very often, especially in very big organizations, in these global brands, the task is usually given to someone who isn't very aware and familiar with what it is that we're exactly going to do here. So there's a lot of research, there's a lot of back and forth, which also means that projects take a very long time to begin to develop, which can also be problematic from a budget perspective. But the positive aspect of it is that everything that we have tried so far, and it's very nice, even though a little bit scary, that really no two projects have been the same in the 7 years that OutHere has been working, or 6, is that the results are always extraordinarily positive. If you're talking about safety training, which we do a lot of, it's extremely positive results. The AR apps that we have done, the IKEA Place for IKEA, we have not built that all on our own. It's a collaboration, but we are one of the partners. And of course, the Bang & Olufsen app, which we have built on our own, have been extraordinarily transformative projects for both companies, and they have generated immense amounts of money for both. So once people start to see this and understand it more and more, I think we will kind of have a sudden upwards curve, but we're not there yet. And a lot of the stuff you do with AR isn't necessarily going to bring money yet.
Yeah, we've been
But
having this conversation for a long time, I know.
Yeah, yeah.
But there are some, as you say, there are definitely hopeful signs. I think the current global setback and particularly for the tech sector has given, it's caused a bit of a pause. I think it's fair to say in terms of what was a very nice trajectory. But I think the dynamic is still all going in one direction. I think we can probably agree on that. Just before we let you go,
I'm positive.
Yeah, exactly. So tell me a little bit about what's happening in Sweden, the AR VR ecosystem. What's it like there? Are there any big players? You mentioned on the client side, companies like IKEA and Bang & Olufsen, which I guess are probably nice clients to work with, for example, very innovative.
They are very. We're lucky in that respect, especially, like I said, because Gothenburg is one of the world's biggest engineering innovation centers. We have all these companies here, from car companies to all other types of engineering, and they are very much, interested and able to experiment and do different things. So in some respects, we're very good. I mean, for the size of Sweden, it's absolutely a pioneer in technology and design and other kinds of things. There's so much innovation coming from this country. So we're good in that respect. But at the same time, it's still all happening on an individual level. Even if it's a big company, it's still not happening collectively. People are still looking at things from their own perspective. Companies are still treating these as small satellites. There is a very common discussion I'm having with many companies and people that we're still a satellite mixed reality. We're still a satellite around the core digital ecosystem, which you think of communication and brand and campaigns and apps and websites and all those kind of things. We're still a satellite around them. We're not inside the actual system yet. And that hasn't happened in Sweden either. I think probably the US is the pioneer in that respect, naturally. But I would be very happy when that happens here, and I think it will.
Yeah, that's something that I think resonates here in the Irish context as well. I think the US, you're right to point out. Also, I think the UK is quite strong as well at a government level. There's a lot of government funding to create centres of excellence as a strategic technology. I think in the UK government, I think within Europe, I think that's probably the strongest support that I've seen anyway at a government level. Yeah, definitely.
Something needs to happen for things to start rolling on a mass scale. And I'm just going to give you one last example, if we have the time for it, in that I think both AR and VR are extraordinarily transformative technologies for museums. I cannot understand how museums have not jumped up on it. Yes. I have spoken to a huge number of organizations and museums throughout the years, and we have toggled with certain ideas and experiments. Unfortunately, and I've heard that from many, many people, the museums were incredibly hurt by the pandemic because they were closed and had no income for a while. So I think that has put a massive stop. But this is an industry in itself that can completely transform through those two technologies.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, as I said, 7 or 8 years ago, I was in with the National History Museum in Ireland and it hasn't quite happened, that idea, but it's a no-brainer to me that,
it's so you said exactly the right thing. There is so many no-brainers in this that it's still incredible that it hasn't happened. So I'm kind of hoping, and once people get to see it like that, then it starts expanding.
Yeah. Filippos, I really enjoyed our discussion. I'm putting a note up there that people should definitely get along, book their early bird. The early bird is still available until April the 20th at arvrinnovate.com. And if you can bring some members of your team with you, I think prices are as low as €88 per person, which is a pretty good price for an international conference with some stellar speakers, just as you've heard there from my guest. Filippos, looking forward so much to seeing you in Dublin, and I'm sure the people watching this video will look forward to meeting you in person as well on Friday, May the 26th. Thanks so much for your time. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alex.